City 91.1 FM on a beautiful welcome once again to another edition of our Indaba program here on Talk City 91.1.
It's time for Global Africa Today. Stories about Africans from around the world.
As usual, every Wednesday evening at around 8 o'clock, we join our crew for another informative hour packed with information. Of course, we always have a report from the Emancipation Support Committee. We have the Africa report, and we have another very interesting discussion of talking about cannabis harmonization in the Caribbean with some special guests. But I'll leave that up to the experts to introduce them to you. And it gives me great pleasure, of course, to welcome once again Shabaka Kambon, Reverend Kwame Kamau, and Dr. Fergus, of course, also featuring Khadija Dyer. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Indeed, a very pleasant good evening to you, Ruskin, and to all of our loyal listeners by way of 91.1 FM Talk City. Of course, we say a very pleasant good evening as well to our YouTube audience joining us live, as well as our Facebook audience. Once you have joined us, we ask that you do three favors. One, you smash a like or better yet, a love on that button. Two, that you comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Are you in the diaspora? Are you on the African continent? Are you tuned in from perhaps the Americas, Asia, Australia? Let us know who you are and where you are tuning in from. And last but not least, we ask on tonight that you do share this live by way of your socials. That way we can get the good news of what's happening in the African community to as far and wide a cross section of our people as possible. Of course, I'm your host for tonight, one of them anyway, Ambassador Reverend Kwame Kamau, and we have with us on tonight our Baba, the people's scholar, the people's historian, Dr. Claudius Fergus, with us. Co-host extraordinaire, and of course we have on tonight as well a program officer, Khadija Dyer, who will be taking us into an ESC report. So much happening within the ESC, and so she's here on tonight to give us, some insights, some very important highlights in terms of what's in store and what's happening within the Emancipation Support Committee world. So with those few words, I hand over immediately to you. Welcome, Queen Sister. How are you?
Well, let me just say good evening. Let me greet my sister before she gets going. And nice to see you again. Of course, I greet my brother in the studio, Ruskin Mark, my brother virtually as well, Kwame. The team that you don't ever see, of course, they're so critical to the success of the program every week. And of course, our international audience and local audience. Go ahead, Khadija. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Yes, as Reverend Kamau said, lots is happening right now at the Secretariat. We are in the midst of registering entrepreneurs for Emancipation Village. You know that last week, leading up to Emancipation Day, we have registered just over 250 entrepreneurs for the village. So yes, the village is growing every year, and it's amazing to see our people coming out and supporting the micro entrepreneurs. We are also getting ready in the midst of registering our school children, our primary school children, for the regional school food competition, which leads into the nationals, which takes place in September, that is aired on TTT. Also, I know we completed a forum, so Rennie can get more information on that. We are also doing, we did actually a drumming session with Xavier Phillips from Wasafuli with some young persons as well. And that for me was really great because it takes patience and you have to be diligent to play the drum. So coming out of that, we are hoping to form our little own ESC drumming group, and hopefully we can be at some of the events as well. And I'm going to end by saying one of my favorite events, we are also preparing for that, Iwa Africa 3. We are going back to Queen Soul, but with a bigger and better show. We are going inside Queen Soul because, again, the fashion show is also growing. So we are going into Queen Soul, and we have an amazing team. Again, we are working with Richard Young, and we promise it's going to be a great show. So we're asking everyone to come out and support. The general tickets 300 and special reserve at 350. Persons can get tickets at our office located 5B Boudreaux Road in Marval, as well as from some of the designers and also from Richard Young.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Well, you did promise that you were doing a whole bunch. Let me ask you a couple of questions before you leave.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're super busy, especially at this time. Is there more space? Micro entrepreneurs wanting to register, can they still do so? Are we booked solid?
We are booked solid. We are booked solid. And it's not just our locals. We also have Caribbean entrepreneurs coming in. We have international entrepreneurs coming in. We have entrepreneurs from the diaspora, from the continent as well, that are coming in for the Pan-African Festival.
Wow. Well, again, thank you for doing the great work that you do. I know that the spoken word competition and all of the other competitions, by the way, Baba plays a very strategic role in making that happen. So thank you again, Dr. Claudius Fergus, for your human service in terms of consulting and supporting that process. Really quick question. How is that process coming along with regards to the children, their participation, the level of excitement? How is that shaping up in terms of that?
Pretty good. So we do have permission from the Ministry of Education to do the competitions. Most important, right? So we sent out invitations to all schools in Trinidad and Tobago as well. So we do have a few spaces remaining. So if teachers, principals, even parents, even youth groups, youth clubs, they want to take part, we welcome everyone. They can call the office 235-5008, ask for Khadija or Rain, or they can WhatsApp the office as well, 292-7288. This year for the regionals, what we do, we create a booklet. So we have speeches, poems, calypsos that tells our story within the booklet. Students have to select one, dramatize it, and perform for us.
Oh, perfect. Well, with that said, thank you so much. We're looking forward to you because as the season, gets a little closer to launch and to all of the various events that are coming down the pipeline, we definitely need you to return to tell us more about the exciting news. You promised to return, yes?
Yes, I promise to return because we're actually 1 month away, from the launch of the Pan-African Festival Community Emancipation 2024, which is on May 25th, 2024.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you at this point in time. Baba Fergus, off to you to introduce tonight's edition of your Africa Report.
Thank you, my brother. This was a very challenging report to put to complete because my computer crashed out on me. Well, not crashed out, but was attacked by virus, which is still on it. So that was a great challenge because a lot of the materials are online. Even the program that I use to put the content together only works when I'm online. And online means, of course, continuing the risk of virus infection.
Yes.
So that was it was really, really, really tough. I introduced a word in the presentation, Chiawadi, and I wondered if I was struck by it as well. You will understand the meaning when you see it and when you hear it. I spelled it out in the program. But it's about the impeachment or threatened impeachment of the president of Ghana. If he's impeached, he will be the first ever president to be impeached. It's hardly likely, bearing in mind that this year is election year. This is his last term in office. He's not running again and it's possible they may run out the clock, so to speak, before. But it's a serious threat, and it's constitutional, it's political, it's judicial. So you're going to hear about it, and of course, feel free to make your comments. It's extremely controversial in some respects. So let's roll, Rene. I don't want to go into it before it comes up. It's kind of controversial. So let's roll, Rene. Bring it up.
That it is obvious that His Excellency the President has breached the Constitution, and we will advise ourselves. In the coming days, don't be surprised that we will begin impeachment proceedings against the President. Thank you.
That was the minority leader in Ghana's parliament, Cassiel Atto-Forson, addressing the media on the standoff with the President of the Republic. No president of independent Africa has ever been forced to abdicate or resign because of impeachment. Some chose to abdicate to avoid impeachment. Cases in point include Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe in 2017 and Jacob Zuma of South Africa in 2018. Impeachment in a presidential system is equivalent to a no-confidence vote in a modern parliamentary system. Impeachment of heads of government is not new to Africa and is not a product of colonialism. To give examples from two cultural spheres. First, the Akan of Ghana. After facing a rebellion by leading Ashanti clans in 1803, Asantehene Osei Kwame Panye abdicated his golden stool by committing suicide. Secondly, the Yoruba of Nigeria. In pre-colonial times, death by suicide was an abomination in Yoruba land, but not the ceremonial suicide of a ruler resulting from impeachment. All levels of rulers, from village chiefs to obas, and even the Alafin of Oyo, could be impeached if they violated their oaths of office, or, as we would say today, if they violated the Constitution. Upon taking his oath of office, an Oba binds himself to commit suicide if demanded by the responsible authorities. The principle behind royal suicide is that the Oba is divine and cannot maintain a physical life if not in the role of king. In respect of the Alafin, a title equivalent to Emperor of Yorubaland, impeachment was decided by the Oyomesi, or High Council of Obas, and delivered by the Bashoru, who was the head of the Oyomesi. The decision of the Oyomesi was transmitted by delivering a covered sacred calabash to the Oba or Alafin. When he received it, he knew what must be done, that is, abdicate the throne by committing ritual suicide. There was no room for appeal. Hopefully, this background sets the tone for this week's Africa Report, the impending impeachment of Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of Ghana. In pre-colonial times, Ghanaians were socialized from infancy into believing that certain behaviors are hateful to the state or the society, which in Akan cosmology is called Oman Achiwadye. Achiwadye means things hated or despised, equivalent to haram in Islam or taboo in general. Achiwadye are considered spiritual offenses against nature or against Asasiya and include murder, suicide, abortion, sexual misconduct, witchcraft, among other offenses. The principle of Achiwadye was invoked in 2021 to bring to Parliament the Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill. This is how Member of Parliament Ahmed Ibrahim expressed it.
We are all doing those things to depopulate Africa.
Okay.
And population is market. Population is the future. And let's teach them our core values. Africa will rise and rise again.
Sam Nate George, the main sponsor of the bill, proclaimed himself as the champion of Ghana's traditional family values against the materialist morality of Britain and America, orchestrated to reduce Africa's population.
I hold the role of the family extremely sacred.
The bill seeks to punish anyone who practices, promotes, or supports activities associated with the gay community. Al Jazeera describes the bill as one of the harshest of its kind in Africa. Only Uganda has a more draconian law that prescribes the death penalty, which the Constitutional Court upheld earlier this month. After years of pro and anti-advocacy within and outside Ghana, The bill was finally passed on the 28th of February 2024 by a unanimous vote of the Parliament. Unanimity is rare in any Parliament. Even rarer still is the refusal of a head of state to receive such a bill. So, on what ground is the President standing? Long before the vote on the bill, Akufo-Addo had told Ghanaians that he would sign it if it was the will of Parliament. Immediately after the passage of the bill, he made a U-turn. Why did he choose to defy the Parliament?
But I want to urge that it is obvious that His Excellency the President has breached the Constitution. And we stand with the Speaker of Parliament in this. Let the President of Ghana and his government be aware.
Between then and now, Ghana witnessed a dramatic collapse of her economy and debt payments, forcing her into the jaws of the IMF and World Bank. This situation makes Akufo-Addo vulnerable to cultural imperialist pressures. He was caught between the devil and the deep blue sea, or as others would say, between a rock and a hard place. The options available to him are sign and risk the suspension of a $4.6 billion bailout from the IMF. Don't sign and risk impeachment by Parliament. But
the President must assent to the bill or must refuse to assent to the bill when it is presented to him as the President of the Republic. These are the only options, and in this case, there is no middle ground at all per the constitutional imperative.
within 1 week of the passage of the bill, popular journalist Richard De La Sky, who is also a lawyer, filed suits in the Supreme Court restraining the Speaker and Clerk of Parliament from presenting the bill to the President and preventing the President from signing the bill until the court rules on the constitutionality of the legislative process. Sky claims that less than half of the 275-member Parliament was present for the voting on the bill. He also cited several articles in the 1992 Constitution to prove that Parliament violated the Constitution. President Akufo-Addo appears to have welcomed the lifeline thrown by Sky's intervention. Accordingly, Addo's executive secretary, Nana Bediator Asante, wrote to the Clerk of Parliament asking him to cease and desist from attempting to transmit the bill to the President for his signature until the court rules on Sky's lawsuits. This delay is not only legalistic but tactical. Akufo-Addo completes his second term in December 2024, 7 months from now. Analysts predict that the judgment may not be delivered before that time. The standoff pits the president not only against the elected representatives of the people, but against the people themselves, since a poll shows that 90% of Ghanaians support the bill. Parliamentarians accuse Akufo-Addo of breaching the Constitution when he refuses to even accept the bill. They argue that nothing prevents him from receiving the bill while he awaits the judgment of the court.
The behavior exhibited by the President in refusing to accept the transmission of this bill not only deviates from established democratic practices, but also undermines the spirit of cooperative governance and mutual respect for the arms of government.
The Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, went further and claimed that the impeachment of the President is the culmination of a recent pattern of his refusal to sign 4 bills passed in the Parliament. One weapon being used by Parliament is their refusal to screen new ministerial nominees. To conclude, an interesting spin to the political standoff has been made by Member of Parliament Ahmed Ibrahim. According to Ibrahim, it was the President himself who concocted the lawsuit and that Sky was only a front. Ibrahim alleges that when Akufo-Addo first announced that he was unable to accept the bill because of the court injunction, Sky had not yet filed the injunction.
Sometimes we are Africans. Let's go the African way, and Africa will rule the world.
The Africa Report will revisit the situation if it changes.
Indeed, indeed. You have done
Yes, my
justice.
brother, you know the territory that we are in. So, what's your view?
Well, first of all, notwithstanding the viral attacks on your computer, you've done human service. I couldn't tell. I don't know what magic you would have worked, but certainly the quality is par excellence. Very briefly, by way of a response, this has been a very controversial issue facing the African continent. We have seen, as it were, the pushback from the IMF. We've seen the pushback from the United States of America, the Secretary of State and other officials, even the Vice President, traveled to Africa to address this issue in the Ugandan context and in other contexts as well. Within Ghana, we've seen and we've heard the pronouncements. So we know that they are really, as you said, damned if they do and if they don't. Now, with regards to His Excellency Yoweri Museveni, it seems that with regards to Uganda's push to do it, it is president backed, it is president supported from the start, and he is not moving, he is not relenting, he's certainly not repenting from his stance. In this particular case, the bill came through the opposition leader who's gaining some momentum, and they may really want to use this as a whipping post, not only against the president, but also against, of course, the leading party as well. So very, very intriguing Africa report. I look forward to seeing how this would unfold. But I think in my last comment, it is a master strategy par excellence that they would have filed this injunction, thereby doing a stall tactic to delay a little bit, which can buy them some time. The presidency may very well end before he has to be forced one way or the other. So we continue to turn to you, Baba, for your follow-up, your advice, as you continue to probe this very sensitive matter, this very sensitive issue. I wouldn't want to be the president of Ghana right now, based on that decision that he has to make. He has to choose between, as they say, the devil and the deep blue sea. And it is not by any means an easy decision.
Yes, so in our planning meeting, next planning meeting, I will explain how I managed in spite of all the challenges and difficulties. It's too much to explain now. Yes, the important thing is that it was done, and I'm satisfied with it, but as I said, it took a heavy toll on me. So let's move on to the next segment of the program, and we have three guests. Bongo, is it Trini, Levi? We're hardly seeing you, so perhaps you need to get a little more in the light.
Right now, I'm experiencing.
Yeah, you're looking like a
just
ghost.
experiencing some problems with my. Experiencing some
Yeah,
problems
you're
with my
looking like a ghost in the. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So over to you, Kwame. Over
Sure,
to
thank you so
you.
much.
Your territory ambassador and all of that. So that's all.
I will be happy to. Again, a very pleasant good evening to our very special guest here on tonight to deal with the special topic of cannabis harmonization in the Caribbean. Of course, on the previous Wednesday's program, we dealt with the whole issue of conversations with Rastafari, commemorations and projections. On this week, we are continuing in a Rastafari theme, though not exclusively Rastafari, again dealing with the issue of cannabis harmonization within the Caribbean. To join us on tonight to unpack this topic and to deal with this topic, they say that, ladies before gents, in this case, empress before emperors. And so we have on tonight no less a person than Queen Sister Keturah Cecilia Bab. Sister Keturah Cecilia is a Rastafari woman of the Order of Nyabingi. Over the decades, she has been involved in many regional Rastafari initiatives and has also represented Rastafari in various forums and panel discussions to bring a better insight about Rastafari livity, life, for those who don't know better. She has contributed to many events to mark the decade of people of African descent. Queen Sister, and I would say Queen Mother for me, Keturah Cecilia Bab, has spent much of her career working in geosector for many decades now. She holds a BA honors in African and Caribbean history and a Master of Science degree in project management and evaluation. We want to say a very pleasant good evening and welcome, Queen Mother Empress Cecilia Bab. Of course, we move on to our next special guest on tonight, and he is coming by way of St. Lucia. We want to welcome on tonight, present to some, introduce to others, Bongo Wisely Tafari, aka Burnett Seeley. Bongo Wisely is an elder within the Nyabingi House and a founding member of the Ianola Council for the Advancement of Rastafari Incorporated. He's the current chairperson of the Caribbean Rastafari Organization, or CRO, and member of the National Reparations Committee in Ianola. Of course, he's also a member of the Caribbean Pan-African Network as well, CPAN. On tonight, so we welcome His Excellency Bongo Wisely Tafari, again, aka Burnett Seeley. Welcome again to Indaba. Last but not least, on tonight, we were to have Trini Levi, as mentioned by Baba Fergus, but owing to circumstance beyond his control, he cannot make it on tonight. But in his stead, we do have another very powerful Rastafari representing TNT, Trinidad and Tobago, and such individual is no less a person than Bongo Grease himself, Ras Glenroy Halls. Ras Glenroy Halls is currently the interim, as it were, chair of the All Mansions of Rastafari, and he continues to represent Trinidad and Tobago and the All Mansions of Rastafari in all issues of politics and diplomacy and economics and social affairs and social issues, not just in the Caribbean, but beyond the Caribbean, within the wider, of course, diaspora, as far, of course, as the continent as well, tuning in and representing our interests by way of virtual fora and summits, as well as in person where required and necessary. Also hailing from the Nyabingi order, Bongo, of course, Greece is no stranger to the Indaba audience, no stranger to our program, certainly no stranger to this community. But it is, of course, imperative that I mention he's also currently representing Rastafari issues on the recently constituted National Reparations Committee of Trinidad and Tobago. Again, it seems as if it is a Nyabingi sweep in Barbados by way of Empress Keturah, by way of St. Lucia, by way of Bongo Wisely, and by way of course, Trinidad and Tobago with Bongo Greece. I want to say a very pleasant good night and welcome to all of you. Baba, I'll kick it off to you to ask the first question, because I'm salivating with a ton of questions myself, but I want to give you first dibs in terms of fielding your question, of course, saluting our guests on tonight.
Well, I'm no specialist in the cannabis activist field, of course. But as a human rights issue, I am concerned, and I have been concerned about with respect to the treatment of Rastafari particularly, and we know that the prejudice was not only about use of cannabis, but about their religion. It was about the way they dressed. It was about their behavior. So it was something that still needs to be addressed. And as you said, Bongo Greece is on the Reparations Committee, the National Committee on Reparations in Trinidad. And those issues come up from time to time. But we are dealing with cannabis this evening. I have seen some retrogression in terms of the decriminalization. So perhaps I would like that to be my first question. I have seen in St. Vincent, for example, where I think they had legitimized the use of cannabis for medical uses, but continued to persecute people for use or for cultivation. So there's this gray area in the decriminalization that you can use it in limited amounts, but you cannot buy it. You can grow it, but you cannot sell it. And so perhaps you can speak to those issues for me. How is it that, in light of the success in terms of decriminalization, that we seem to have made no advances whatsoever, and instead there seems to be a creeping sort of retrogression in terms of one, penalizing people, and two, in terms of who benefit from it, because it doesn't seem as if the people who traditionally grew cannabis and who were the main users of cannabis have really benefited from decriminalization. So I would put that to you, and hope you understand where I'm coming from. I speak only from one, you can say one polity, and that's St. Vincent. Of course, in Trinidad, we have a situation where the decriminalization has been limited. I cannot say for sure that we have had any backward movement in it, but we have had no forward movement either. We have had no progress. So, what is the state of things today as it stands in each of the territories that you represent? Let's get going with our sister Queen, Keturah.
A very pleasant good night again, Empress Mother. The ball is sent your way to remove the shine. So the luxury, the benefit is yours to get that shine off of our cork ball, to use a cricket term on tonight. What are the differences in relation to cannabis legislation and legality within the various CARICOM states? We know that you're coming out of the Barbados context, so perhaps you may wish to start there. And then, of course, further to that, we can look at other territories. Of course, we do have Trinidad and Tobago represented by way of Bongo Greece on tonight. And we do have, of course, St. Lucia as represented by Bongo Wisely. But over to you.
Good night, and thank you very much from the organizers of this panel for the invitation to be here tonight and to share what I am aware of as far as Barbados is concerned. Greetings to my brothers on the panel, Heliai, Selassie, Jah, Rastafari. Greetings unto I. The Lord is upon I head like a crown. I shall not be without his imperial majesty. He wove for I a crown of truth, and caused its branches to bud within I. For it is not a withered crown that groweth not, but thou liveth upon I head. Thy works are full grown and perfect, they are full of the eye salvation. Greetings again to everyone, to all of our listeners, wherever, on whatever channels or medium that you may be listening. I'm based in Barbados, and I can only speak to my knowledge of Barbados authoritatively. For the other countries of CARICOM, I rely on hearsay, on papers I've read, or legislation that I might have seen. So to speak for Barbados, there is no decriminalization of cannabis in Barbados. There are two pieces of legislation that I'm very aware of. One is the medical marijuana industry bill, or medical cannabis industry bill, and that permits people who have purchased a license to grow cannabis under license. And different aspects of the trade or the industry that is envisioned carry different levels of licenses. So if you have a license to grow, you need a separate license to transport, you need a separate license to process, you need a separate license to export, that sort of thing. So that's what obtains in Barbados. There's no decriminalization of ganja, marijuana, cannabis in Barbados. In the 2 elections ago, it was part of the manifesto that recreational use of cannabis would be put to a referendum. That has not happened, and therefore, the prohibition of the use of marijuana, of cannabis, of ganja obtains and continues in Barbados. The entire jurisdiction of Barbados observes one position, and it is either marijuana that's grown, processed, transported, exported, and any part of the value chain under the cannabis medical cannabis bill, or you are prosecuted. So people continue to be prosecuted. Let me make the picture complete by saying and recognizing the spirit, the energy, and the works of Ras Iral, who has joined the ancestors. I, through the House of Nyabingi, made sterling representation and engagement with the Attorney General over a period of several months to differentiate between what the proposed referendum for recreational use, to delineate the fact that Rastafari use of cannabis is not recreational, but rather it is sacramental. However, we do have an ethnobotanical relationship with cannabis that encompasses the environmental aspect, the social aspect, the cultural use, and the economic aspect, so that Rastafari rights, Rastafari relationship, Rastafari experience, and Rastafari history, as far as cannabis is concerned, must not be limited to the sacramental area only, but in fact must encompass all of that. There was a concession made with a sleight of hand so that a sacramental rights bill was passed. This sacramental rights bill envisions and permits Rastafari to grow cannabis around the tabernacle under conditions that are approved by the Attorney General after inspection by whichever police officer or police unit has been designated to so make their assessment. Rastafari is not able to travel with ganja. You may not possess ganja seeds. You may not travel with seedlings from one location to another if you are going to try to assert any rights under that sacramental rights. So what we have is something that has been given with one hand and removed with the other hand. So it stands there on the book. You can't say that we didn't hear you, but in fact, it is not possible to implement or to enjoy any kind of rights under the sacramental rights legislation that was passed shortly after, and by shortly within a year of the medical marijuana industry bill, the sacramental rights bill was passed, but it's not something that we are able to implement. And I would stop here as far as Barbados is concerned. I can take other questions later.
Thank you so very much, Queen Mother. It then therefore begs the question, if we have a piecemeal approach in terms of legislation in the Caribbean that goes against what we would call the tenets of the report that was actually commissioned by CARICOM. Please permit me, if I may, before I inquire of the other emperors here, their responses. 3 categories of recommendations. I've preceded, I've summarized it for the benefit of our Indaba audience. So CARICOM did commission a marijuana report, a marijuana study. It was done by Her Excellency, of course, Professor Dr. Rosemary Bell Antoine. And coming out of this report, which was done, this study which was done, there were 3 major categories of recommendations. 1, legal reform, a call for careful consideration of legal reform that captures the complex socio-economic and legal dimensions of what they call marijuana policy, speaking to what you addressed a little earlier, beyond the sacramental right, the sacramental use. Rastafari has a right to participate fully in the economy, but that has been, at least in the Barbados case, been denied you. Secondarily, regional approaches. Recommendation. This is paid for by CARICOM taxpayers. The necessity for a unified regional policy to address the issue cohesively across CARICOM states, enhancing policy reform. 1, legitimacy, and 2, stability, so that what is sacramental in one area and medical in another area, you can do 2 plants in one area, you can have 1 ounce in one area, you have a half ounce in another area. That does not create the legitimacy and the stability towards socio-economic and proper legal reform. Thirdly, the report says, before I go on to the question, health and rights-centered approach. The report advocates for an end to prohibition and the adoption of a health and rights-centered approach to marijuana, cannabis, moving away from criminalization. I'm going to ask the question now to Bongo Wisely, chair of CRO. 4 major recommendations: 1, legal; 2, dealing with the whole issue of again the health approach, and then 3, dealing with the whole issue of the inclusion of the socio-economic piece towards greater legitimization as well as stability. Do you think, if you were to judge whether it was St. Lucia or the CARICOM in general, how do we fare based on the report that we paid for? Are we living up to the recommendations of the report, or are we not in a St. Lucia context? Again, very pleasant good evening and welcome to Indaba. Bongo Wisely.
Yes, yes, greetings, Rastafari. As we say, glory to word, glory to sound, glory be to the powers of the living eye, Kedamawi, Haile Selassie, and Empress Mene. I say, hail to the Lord's anointed, great David's greater son. Hail in his time appointed, his reign on earth began. He came to break down oppression and to set the captives free, to take away transgression and to rule in equality. Equality and justice stands for all who know that reparation time is now. To come make you rally round the red, the gold, the black and green. Your hands and your heart must be pure and clean. Give thanks, Rastafari, Selassie. Yes, I, Bongo Wisely Taparai from Ayanola, St. Lucia. I give thanks for the opportunity to be on this platform to share the little experiences, the little knowledge which I've gained over the years. So I give thanks again for the opportunity to be here. Yes, I will, as per the question, as you say, CARICOM Regional Cannabis Commission was established, around must be 2013 thereabout. to look into the possibilities of trying to come with some kind of congruent laws, or to harmonize the position of cannabis within the region. Now, when it comes to cannabis, the culture of cannabis came down to the Caribbean following emancipation, when the indentured servants from India was sent down to the West to kind of add to the labor force. The Indians, we know, they've been within their spirituality. Cannabis plays an important role within their spirituality. So India brought down to the Caribbean, they traveled with their cannabis. And so, as we would say, through cultural sharing, eventually the Africans who, when they were forcefully taken away from Africa, they had their connection with cannabis, but then being forcefully sent to the West, some of them lost that connection. But the Indians brought it forward and they embraced it. So then, in terms of the Caribbean leaders, one of the reasons why the CARICOM, the Regional Cannabis Commission, was established was, as I said before, to try and bring congruency within the laws and harmonization. But also the leaders realized that a number of young people within the Caribbean who end up being incarcerated for possession or use of the herb. Now, some of them, that was their first experience with the law or being an affront to the law. So some of them end up in captivity in prison where they were associated with hardcore criminals. So what they've realized is that a number of those youths, when they serve their time, it looked like it looked like some of them may have made a resolution to continue with crime being a way of life for them. Having learned all the intricacies of criminality and crime within the prison, when they returned out of prison, some of them continued in that same direction. So the reason was genuine, but then, as we always know, our leaders sometimes never really live up to the expectations which is set before them. The CARICOM Regional Cannabis Commission made recommendations, as you said, for legalization with regulation of the cannabis in all different forms. But what we've realized is that a number of the leaders within CARICOM seem to be wanting to do it their way, in a way which would be, appealing to them, or in a way where they feel, well, probably if they do it that way, they will be able to win an election, gain votes, and so on, So the genuineness of dealing with the situation was not really there. A lot of them get carried away, within that level. So what has happened is that, as I say, though the CARICOM report, as you say, taxpayers' money was spent to establish that commission. Commission was supposed to have visited all the different islands to interview people, get information, get feedback as to how they feel towards cannabis reform. But even from that perspective, not all the islands entertained the commission. St. Lucia, for example, never entertained the commission. The commission never had a chance to visit St. Lucia. to deal with us and to get our perspective. But eventually it went ahead. The result came out, and we are quite satisfied with the result which has come out of that Cannabis Commission. But again, we see there seems to be the lack of togetherness, the lack of harmonization, as the topic tonight is harmonization of cannabis laws. As to whether there is harmonization, presently it is lacking. But that doesn't mean it's at the end of the road, because even with the whole cannabis reform, it is something, as they would say, it's like a new road our leaders traveling on. Some of them want to learn the hard way through the experience. So some of them, they look at the other practices in other countries and take it from there, you know? But still, in terms of the legislation which supposed to be in place, you know, we see the leaders doing their own thing. In some countries, they decriminalize 5 plants. They say you could have 5 plants per household. In some countries, it is 4 plants per household. In terms of possession, some countries say you can have 1 ounce. Some say you can have 2 ounces. Some say you could just have 30 grams. You know, so it shows that there's no stability, there's no congruency. Although monies was spent to set up that commission, which gave recommendations as the way forward, but yet we see all the leaders doing their own thing, you know? So presently, in terms of the harmonization of the laws, if we are to depend on the leaders, we're wasting our time. So it calls for civil society groups to really stand up to this cause, you know, and probably to make the necessary proposal or recommendations to the politicians, to the leaders, you know, because currently all the islands within CARICOM, in terms of the enabling environment, the Caribbean is blessed with the climate, the soil type, the weather, and so on for the cultivation of cannabis. But then to really, for the harmonization to take place, it has to be from an industrial position, where the Caribbean region, if they want to go medicinal, they say, well, all right, we want to go medicinal marijuana. They are the standards which would be required. They are the parameters which have to be used to encourage or to enhance a medicinal cannabis industry. Because with medicinal industry, again, moving away from the traditional way, you know, because from the beginning, Rastafari has always been declaring that cannabis is the healing of the nation. So we are fully aware of its medicinal properties, but it is not limited to medicinal properties. As we know, there is the industrial hemp. There is what as the Rastafari community, what we call the sacramental use of the herb, because it enhances our spirituality, and we use it to enhance that communication between us and our Creator. And even
Brother Safari, let's bring in Bongo Grease. We are nearing the top of the hour, so we need to hear from our third guest this evening. Bongo, what's the situation in Trinidad, and how do you link that up comparatively to Barbados and St. Lucia? Go ahead.
First, I would say no one should question the fate of others, for no human can judge the ways of Kadamawi Haile Selassie. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frame mischief by law, to gather themselves together against the righteous and condemn the innocent blood? Now, the question about cannabis policy today has become very, very, very technical. We have worked hard, the All-Manchans and Rastafari, we have sent in position papers to the government. Yesterday, it has been decriminalized. You have 4 trees. And the education policy, the education about cannabis still needs to be in a wide range. Because with your 4 trees, you can now plant, have your medicine, pick your herb for your tea, pick your herb for your tea, pick your herb for your medicines, and everything like that. But in terms of cannabis has always been an economic factor to the Rastafari. The purpose why cannabis has been illegal was a way to control the commerce that the brethren, that the Rastafari family was making. It's all about control of commerce, right? So they killed that from the Rastafari community. The Rastafari community had been oppressed, prisoned, and all these different things because of the herb. Today, let us be real. What we are seeing today is that although we have 4 trees and these things, the Rastafari community does not even make a substantial amount from the illegal commerce of marijuana anymore, since there's 4 trees. Because what you are seeing now is that there's a new trend. The new trend means we are now seeing younger folks, younger African folks, who some may call themselves, well, I don't want to use the word for them, but who on the streets are now taking over the commerce. So anywhere you pass, whether you walk in the street, some young person now just call, I have it harder, I have it this. So there's a different trend. So if within the Rastafari context, cannabis has always been food, clothes, and shelter to the Rastafari. If the Rastafari community do not come together to seek apart from their sacramental rights, as the saying go, we were enslaved because of a plant sugarcane. And why it is now based on cannabis, we cannot make an economic improvement of it rather than just to say, have it as a sacrament. No, it cannot be always as a sacrament. It has to be a balance. And as such, when you look at it, this whole thing about it now is that when we look at the reason for the decriminalization was because there were actually more African youths involved in prison than anybody else. The whole question between the 18 and 90s was a discoloration problem, a colored problem. Our youths were the ones who were put in. So there needs to be now a whole revival as we go into the topic of reparatory justice, elimination for racism and all these things we have to look at within the context where this thing has to be handled from an African point of view, whether it be all Africans or the African young ones within the African context to deal with cannabis. Because at the end of the day, most of the 1% or the people who used to buy cannabis from the Rastafari community are no longer buying. They are now involved in high commerce with all different types of high grade. They have the facilities, they have the indoors. So they are now planting. And while they are planting, they are opening their own private clubs. So while they open their own private tea clubs, they buy from the sell, they do everything. So there is a sort of stagnancy in terms of the economy where they used to purchase from the Rastafari. And if we don't take that seriously, what is going to happen when the license fee and thing come out? How would we compete with them against the shelf, the grocery, when there's a consumer's mafia? So we have to put things in place within the Rastafari community to look at it from an African context, where we must come together in terms of guaranteed our rights. Now, the reason why many African youths have made a jail, Rastafari is a bona fide religion under the Constitution. As such, we have seen many lawyers in Trinidad, but if it is that the Constitution of your country contravene your personal right, then you can go to the High Court and contest that. And under Rastafari, we are being hindered from our freedom and enjoyment of life in terms of our teaching, practice, and observance. Freedom of conscience. No lawyer never pick up that. Nobody never stand up for us. Our youth are
okay, Bongo, I'll let you continue, but we have to say goodnight to our listeners on 91.1 FM. We thank you for tuning in to Indaba, and we hope to see you again next week. So, Bongo, you can wrap up your contribution, and then you can have a sort of final word, and then we would make the rounds with some final comments from our other two guests. So go ahead.
Well, my final comments is that the time has come, my brothers and sisters.
No, you can conclude on that Trinidad issue, because I think it's very important what you say.
Yeah. So as Rastafari, we need to come together, because how are we going to compete against the 1% or the other people in terms of their shelf life? When they have more money, they are more involved in the consumers mafia, they have the lands, they have everything. So the only way we have to come together, there must be a coalition among ourselves in coming together, understanding what is happening with the present trends and what is happening with the economy, and how can we seek to be, how can we enjoy a slice of the cake that we have actually helped to bake, So, there's so much to say that, like I fall short of words because it's too much. I become emotional. So what I would say to my brothers and sisters is that we cannot take the concerns of cannabis, lightly anymore. There has to be an education program. We must come. There cannot be any individual to say any individual happening. We must come together as one, and let's all take it and join with our youth and take it within the African context. I give thanks. I conclude.
Thank you. Sister Katura, your final comments? Closing remarks, please.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.
As my closing remarks, I want to respond to what Bongo Grease just said, associate myself with the proposal that he's making, but also to share that way back about 2013, 2014, the Caribbean Rastafari Organization had set up a reparations repatriation working group. And under the auspices of that, the group in Barbados took the lead on that particular topic. And we made sure to make concrete proposals as the Barbados arm of CRO to the Reparations Commission, the Reparations Task Force that existed at that time, and to ensure that our position, our recommendation, our paper become part of the report of the Reparations Committee. Our recommendations and our demands covered 4 areas. Those were legal, economic, sociocultural, and sacramental. So Bongo Grease, the work had started. It kind of lost momentum after the passing of our brother Ras Iral, but it is something that CRO is seriously considering to take it up again and to promote the recommendations that we had made. I'm out of time in terms of going into detail, but we made recommendations along 5 areas, the 5 fingers on the hand, and they're all interwoven. One doesn't stand separate from the other, but that's an initiative that we had done, and the proposal was for us to publicize that around the region. I can say with surety that the group in the Rastafari arm in St. Kitts and Nevis actually used this proposal very effectively to get a number of concessions, shall I say, in terms of how the Rastafari community is being treated in St. Kitts, something akin to what has happened in Antigua. But this proposal that we had made, and which is in fact a part of the Reparations Task Force report, has been used at least by 1 country to help to liberate them from what we experience in Barbados, where the use of cannabis is still criminal. You could still get hauled before the courts. All the atrocities and all the violations we have suffered continue to happen. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Safari, and then Brother Kwame will take a look at our comments and respond when necessary, and then take us out. Brother Safari, closing remarks.
Yes, again, as we've observed with what is happening within the Caribbean region and even within St. Lucia, most of the governments today, they seem to be focused on just medicinal marijuana, medicinal cannabis. Now limiting reforms solely to medicinal cannabis is only a partial, inadequate, and a temporary solution to the problems which were highlighted from the beginning. If change is truly sought, it is necessary to move towards models of state regulation of cannabis for all purposes, meaning for medicinal purposes, for sacramental use, for recreational use, for industrial use, and therapeutic use, whatever. All of these would have to be taken on board so that the harmonization, because for even with the medicinal cannabis, where they would be looking to export to other regions, standards would have to be put in place, and there must be standards which would have to be established so that whatever one gets in this country, they would get it in another country. Also, in terms of the harmonization, again, we would like to see that the Caribbean region be considered a cannabis-free zone, in the sense that there wouldn't be any taxing or anything for traveling from one country to another. Then we could zone the region, go into areas for industrial hemp, areas for medicinal cannabis, as well as areas for sacramental and therapeutic and recreational cannabis. So these are the things that are needed if we really need to see a harmonized cannabis industry in the region. There must be that togetherness, that coalition of thoughts. And as I said, it would take the grassroots people, the traditional growers, civil society organizations to really bring this thing to the fore, and they would definitely need the support of the politicians. So with that, I give thanks for the opportunity to be here on Indaba tonight. Give thanks.
Thank you very much. Kwame, who is online with us? Let's hear a summary and take us out.
Sure, no problem. By way of our online guests tuned in on tonight, we do have Razbuki out of Panama saying, "Keep up the good works, family." Out of Honduras, we have the Kingdom of Judah in America saying, "We give thanks for Rastafari wisdom." Out of New York, we have Empress Deborah E. Walters greeting the Indaba family. We also have Bay Islands of Honduras International Human Rights Defenders as well, sending peace, security, and prosperity. Son of the Living God, His Excellency Hippolyte Joel Pear, just to name a few. Of course, with regards to the legalization issue, Excellency Pascal is saying, "Give thanks for the communication. Legalization of marijuana is Rastafari business." And so with those words, I want to, of course, thank all of our listeners by way of Facebook, by way of YouTube, and of course, our very loyal listeners by way of 91.1 FM who've already tuned out of the broadcast some minutes ago. But in closing, I want to remind us of the words of the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. For in 2018, the government of Antigua and Barbuda took a significant step by formally apologizing to the Rastafari community. This apology was delivered before the Organization of American States, the OAS. The Prime Minister of Antigua Barbuda, Gaston Brown, His Excellency, and the Honorable, expressed a great regret for decades of discrimination that Rastafari and the Rastafarian community had endured at the hands of the government. The apology, of course, aimed to improve relations with this religious group and was in line with the Inter-American Democratic Charter of the OAS, which emphasizes the elimination of discrimination and respect for cultural and religious diversity in the Americas, including the Caribbean. Notably, and I pay homage to him even in absence, Ambassador Franklin Francis, aka Ras Frankai, who has gone on to be with the ancestors, who has transitioned, a prominent member of the Rastafari community, also addressed the OAS, marking a historic moment as the first time a Rastafarian or Rastafari had spoken to an international intergovernmental organization. And so, with regards to this issue, there is reparatory justice wound up and bound up in this issue, not only at the local level in terms of what was done at the level of Antigua and Barbuda. That's certainly a first step. We look forward to other forms of reparatory justice, compensation, restitution, guarantees of non-repetition, the entire entourage, the 5 suites, including cessation of hostilities being engaged not only by Antigua Barbuda, but by way of all of CARICOM and certainly by way of the United Nations. I land by saying that it was not until 2020 that an international scientific study was done on cannabis. So all of the treaties that engaged, and it was done by the World Health Organization at that time, all of the treaties, including the single treaty, of course, with regards to the Convention on Narcotics and all of these treaties, all of them were operating really on stigma and discrimination and not on pure science. When the research was finally done by the World Health Organization, it was recognized that cannabis should be removed immediately from Schedule 4 and only remain in Schedule 1, showing that it does have therapeutic value, it does have medicinal value. My closing comment would be, we've paid for a commission, we've paid for a report, we've been given 3 major points. Legalization by way of cannabis with regulation. 2, harmonization of all of the Caribbean states. And 3, operating from a health and human rights perspective. Well, for now, we've run out of time, but not out of love, not out of faith, not out of words. I want to thank Baba Fergus for joining us on tonight's edition of Indaba. And of course, we want to thank as well our backstage team, our producer, Empress Mother Zakia Ozuma Wadada, as well as our technical staff in Rene Francois of the Emancipation Support Committee. Again, thanking our audience for tuning in on tonight. But this has been yet another edition of the program. We are signing out on tonight, but we are certainly not signing off from our love and light and logic. And we certainly bid you Ubuntu greetings, Ubuntu good night. Until the next one, bless up according to the words of Rastafari. See you soon. Tunanitena and Kwaheri.